Okay, welcome everybody tonight to the Monday, July 13th regular council meeting, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of viewers tonight, so we will get started here. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and we have no 3-minute delegation tonight, so I'm looking for approval of the agenda for the July 13th meeting. Moved by Debbie, seconded by Sherry. Any questions on the agenda? All in favor of the motion? Accept the agenda. Motion carried. Any conflicts of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Showing none. We have 2 sets of meetings. First, we'll do the minutes. We'll have one motion to receive both of them. First, the minutes of the June 15th regular council meeting. Any questions or comments on that? Seeing none, we will go to the Stone Mill special council meeting, June 15th. Questions or comments on that? I'd like a motion to receive both. We haven't got John on the picture here, so I can't see what's going on.
Yeah. My video's good.
Yeah, I think we got too many people on here.
Your Worship, Mark Oliver and Jeff Wan will have to make their screens black in order.
There he is.
You should have vision now, Your Worship.
Okay, good enough. Okay. You okay with John? Everything was just done?
Yes.
Okay, good enough. Okay, we have delegations tonight and deputations. The next item of the agenda is a delegation from concerned citizens of the community of environmental regarding the site plan application SP04 2019. I'd like to point out that with COVID-19 restrictions, council made the decision to have only written deputations at Zoom meetings. We have refused previous requests for an oral presentation. However, due to the time-sensitive nature of this issue, we are making a one-time exception. So please proceed with your 15-minute delegation. Mark, do you want to go with this?
Thank you very much, and thank you for allowing us to participate this evening. Out of respect for your long agenda, I'll be brief and only make a few comments to detail the concerned citizens for our community environments requests that were submitted in writing earlier. Jeff and I will be attempting to answer any follow-up questions you might have. The Township of Stone Mills Council is on record stating that if there's new technical information indicating risk to the community in the Slack Family Farm's proposed intensive livestock operation, then at that point in time, the project would be stopped. To that end, the CCCE has provided a report from the expert hydrologist, Wilf Ruland, stating that the proposed location is unsuitable for an intensive livestock operation. It's too close and up gradient to the hamlet of Aaronsville and Beaver Lake. The soil is highly permeable and rests on fractured bedrock with karst features. There's a risk of contamination reaching neighbors' wells and the pristine neighboring waterways. Mr. Ruland released the draft report, to initiate expert review and discussion about these issues as soon as possible. We're talking about a serious risk to the community health and safety, and as such, it's an urgent matter. Before it's finalized, the reviewers should be engaged and their opinions should be considered. If the reviewers are unable to refute Mr. Ruland's technical assessment, then council must stop the project to eliminate this risk to the community and to eliminate the risk to the local waterways and associated tourism. We note that council has received several letters in agreement with our view and a few in support of Slack Family Farms. We note that none of those supporting letters address the concerns of the community about the risks to our health and safety associated with locating this project so close to the hamlet and lake on permeable soil on fractured limestone. The issue isn't about Mr. Slack or his family, it's the location of the proposal. Quinte Conservation, XCG Consulting, Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, and the KFLNA Medical Officer of Health should all be requested to officially review Mr. Ruland's draft report and engage with Wilf. They should be asked, do they refute Mr. Ruland's findings? If none of those reviewers contradict the scientific findings of Mr. Ruland, then council should stop the project. In order to avoid future burdensome expenditures by council and the proponent, we're asking council to immediately stop this project until these concerns are resolved. Thank you.
Mr. Wan have something to say? Can you hear me?
Sorry, Your Honor. No, I don't have anything to add.
Okay, thanks. Say yeah. Okay, thanks, Mark.
Thank
Before we open the floor up here, I got a few comments I want to make on this. And there's going to be questions and concerns. For the past 20 years, I have lived on Beaver Lake. I have farmed here for 45 years. I can deeply see both sides. My 6 grandchildren swim here, and my boys fish in Beaver Lake. The concerned citizen groups are not the only people who want to protect our lakes. Everyone wants to protect our waterways. When the Beaver Lake Preservation Group existed, and I was a member, the water samples showed contamination. Nothing was done about it. There's a lot more we could do by making sure Beaver Lake is safe. I fully support any efforts from water testing and checking for existing sources of our contamination. With regards to the report from Mr. Rulon, I would strongly suggest that you send a copy of your report to the agents you said, OMAFRA, Ministry of Environment, Quincy Conservation, and so forth. These are the people who will make the decisions. They are the experts. I am sure that if they see things in the report that are a problem, they will deal with it. These agencies have the legal authority to make the decision. This is your report. It's not council's report. Lastly, I have no concerns with the safety of the manure tank. As for spreading manure, farmers have done it for decades. Mr. Slack will be required to follow strict rules from a MAFRA when he spreads manure. I think as council, we have done our job, and I stand behind the decision to proceed with this. So anybody from council, any questions or comments? Mark, you want to comment what I said? Can't hear you, Mark.
No, I appreciate your position on it. And I too was part of that Beaver Lake Preservation Association that conducted all of that water sampling, and those files are still on record, and they're great assets. I guess, perhaps we agree to disagree on this.
Fair enough. Anybody else? Go ahead, Sherry. Can't hear you, Sherry. You're zoomed out.
So I basically, I have written down some of the same things that you already said, Eric, but I just want to, we're all aware that the Slack Family Farms has met the requirements set out before them so far. And it's always been my understanding that when or if anything came up during the building phase, then it would be dealt with at that time. So I guess I had the very same question is, why hasn't the group, since they hired Mr. Ruland and had him do the report, why does council have to be in the middle? Why can't they just forward it themselves? And of course we want to know if there's issues, but I don't know why we have to be the third party involved, why they can't send it on, and then if there's issues, it's brought to council at that time. Because I don't see anything concrete in that report of an actual issue that we know of now. There's lots of could be's and what ifs, but not a specific thing that would make us halt the program or the project right now, as far as I can see. Thank you.
Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I reviewed that report, and I was around 20 years ago, and I remember some of what come up 20 years ago. And we, all of us, we're elected by all of the municipality to represent all of the municipalities. So in this case, we're not only representing Mr. Slack, but we're also representing the area residents. And I do remember back in 2000 that there was concerns about contamination and some missing information around well reports and that. And again, it's been brought up here. If this project is successful, guess what? No concern to nobody. If this project is not successful, there's going to be a lot of concern to a lot of people. The people who lose their water in Aaronsville and that. I don't see why. And also, I think it's imperative that we do our best to protect the slacks in this too, that they don't want to be, find an issue where they end up on the wrong side of it either, because there's implications, down the road for other issues with that. I don't see a problem with it, and I think we actually should forward this to the MOE and the appropriate bodies to at least ask the questions, do you see anything wrong, especially around the missing water samples and the E. coli contamination issues? I really think we should. And I mean, I'm willing to listen to everybody else, but I'm also willing to make that a motion.
Go ahead, Wendell, then Kevin.
First of all, if you're making that a motion, I would second that motion. But I do wonder if Jason could speak to the fact that this is a draft report. Will these agencies look at a draft report?
Thank you. Through you to Councillor Lalonde's question as it relates to the nature of the report and the hydrogeologist's signature absent. I use the analogy, I'm not a professional hydrogeologist, I'm a professional land use planner, and I would use the analogy that it's an opportunity for the author of the report to have an out. So yes, there is an ability for a reviewer to review a report that's in draft form, but it provides any technical comment, concern, error or omission and contained within that report. It contains or provides the ability, or the author the ability to state that, yeah, that was provided for draft review. I would recommend that a final report be one that's provided for the review of a technical agency.
That answer your question, Wendell?
Pardon me?
That answer your question?
I believe it does.
Okay. Going to want to Kevin here.
Um,
Kevin,
yes, I did. I just wanted to point out that I believe it was Melrose that did the original hydrological study. And then we had it previewed by the Quinte Conservation, and they said it was okay. And then we sent it off to another CCG or whatever, whatever the other experts, hydrologists, people, and they looked at it and they came back and said it was okay. And I guess what I'm saying is we've got the experts on our payroll. They've did their due diligence. I again would hate to see anything happen, but I mean, there is a risk factor for anything and everything. I think this is a situation where these folks have agricultural land. They want to use it for that reason, and I think they should be able to. They've crossed their T's and dotted the I's, and I don't see any reason why it would be stopped. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Thank you.
I'm just going to ask Mark a question here before we go further. You hear me, Mark?
Yep.
Okay. Why would your group not send this report to those agencies?
Well, I'd be happy to answer that shortly, and Jeff might be able to add more information to it, but the answer is we have sent it to them.
You have sent it to them.
We have sent them copies of it. We've sent Mr. Slack a copy of it.
So why would the council get involved instead of?
It was our understanding that if a request came from the council, that you might get directed information, and you might feel that it was perhaps a bit more objective than if it was just coming directly to you through us. We thought that council might wish to have their own information.
I guess I didn't remember that direction. Anyway, go ahead, John.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hallelujah.
Art.
Okay. It doesn't matter who sends it. The group has sent it around. I think it would show that we're participating in the process to make a formal motion, which Doug seems to be willing to make, to send it to the relevant agencies. That's fine. And I would also, and I've been saying this in the sort of community discussion forums and emails and so on and so forth, I think we should also, since the main focus here, I think, is going to be water quality and follow-up testing and monitoring. It was a suggestion from a community member from the group, actually, that I probably should have thought of myself, but let's get KFL&A Public Health involved, at least from the well water standpoint. So once Doug has had his motion, I'm going to suggest that we send it on there as well. And I think we should also get XCG to provide us with an opinion on Mr. Rulin's report as well. I'll just leave it at that for the moment. If Doug's interested in making some motion.
Why don't we combine them?
I don't, I think they should be separate motions. So,
I can work either way.
pardon?
I can work either way. I don't see why we can't combine them though.
I guess I have a little concern with this, every time council comes, we make a decision here. And you can get 10 agencies out there, like somebody could pick some little thing apart. What faith do we have in our Ontario ministries to look after this? That's my question. Go ahead, John.
Well, I think no agency is infallible. We have a significant amount of community concern here. We've got a report from a credentialed hydrogeologist who's worked on some pretty high profile projects in the past. It doesn't hurt to have a thorough airing of all the personal and professional opinions, because this is a pretty big deal locally. So I don't think it hurts. We can, I mean, I've already had informal responses from people at the relevant agencies. I think there's a lot of sort of back channel discussion going on. Let's make it formal. Let's get some response from them. If they say everything's copacetic with these added conditions, fine, we can go with that. If they say, holy smokes, we never thought of that, thank goodness Mr. Rulin pointed that out, in that case, we'll see at least a pause or perhaps a halt to the project. I would also suggest that the SLACs, I'm sure, would not want to be proceeding with a project feeling confident that everything's fine, and then find out down the road that there was an oversight that results in compromising their operation in some significant way. So something like the Rulin report is a kind of a good, if you want, final test of the analysis that I think it doesn't hurt at all to go through.
David, you have something?
Yes, I was just wondering, what are the costs going to be for the municipality? At this point, I feel as a council, we have made a faithful decision. We've done all our homework. We've been provided and given to the outside agencies all that we have. And I would very much be disappointed to think that this might cost the taxpayers of this township more money for something that we already know.
Doug and John both got their hands up.
Yeah, Eric, you asked a question there a few minutes ago. Well, you mentioned that council made a decision, so why do we change it? Well, it wasn't a unanimous decision. On May 19th, I didn't vote in favor of this proposal. I had questions and concerns, and I still have questions and concerns. Mainly, and number one, it's with the groundwater and anything that would affect the groundwater in the village of Earnsville and downstream. So it's not a dead issue. And as far as we have, the concerned citizens are representatives only of a larger group of people. And we're supposed to represent everybody, not just a handful of people. If there's a problem out of this downstream, it's going to cost a lot more than a few dollars right now. So I mean, I think we have the ability to have this discussion. We'll see where the vote goes, but I think we should support this.
I guess to your comments there, the night of this council goes on what the decision of council votes on. Am I right or am I wrong?
The council position was not unanimous, so I don't have
No, I didn't.
to agree with it in the aftermath. I can still oppose it.
Now, you're going to say, but do you not support the council's decision when council makes
I
a
didn't
decision?
agree with it at the time, and I still don't agree with it.
Okay, well, why didn't you make a motion that night to stop it?
Maybe
We're
I
getting
did.
a
I
little
should
technical
have.
here.
Maybe
Anyway, John, you go ahead here.
Well, just addressing Deb's concern about costs, there should not be any further costs from the ministries or Quinte Conservation, Deb. This is just part of the consultation process, nor would there be a cost if we do entertain my motion to send it to KFLNA Public Health.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Are we not opening up a door, folks, to anytime there's an issue that somebody disagrees with or does not like or has offense to or whatever, they maybe can stall it, get it, this is a draft from a person, I believe, Mr. Ruland's Peterborough area. And I just think that we're opening a door here that, we can just carry on down. We've had, I spoke with somebody about this and I said, simple fact, you went and bought a lot and it's okay to build on its residential. You drill a well and you get an MOE or whoever says you can put a tile bit on it. Some people down the road don't want a house there. So they start and then now all of a sudden there's a problem with building a house there. And you have to look at it in that sense, in the sense that they have done all the stuff they were asked to do according to the bylaws, and they've passed all those hoops. And now here we are going to go back through it again. And I just think it's a bad move on the township to start with that because of other people coming in and wanting to build here and do things. It shows a bad precedence. Thank you.
Who else had their hand up next there? Anyway, I guess there's a motion on the floor, but I guess I'm going to say one more thing here. If you're a group of people or something, and I read the report there, and some of Mr. Ruin's saying we rushed into it, this and that. Well, it had to be some pretty good information handed from the concerned citizens. So usually if you're paying the bill, a lot of times you can get a report you want to hear. In a lot of cases, and I think that was, I'm not going to mention any names, but that was mentioned by a couple people at council. So I guess I look at, when they made the remarks there that we rushed into a council, this and that. I don't think all of that report was done by Mr. Ruin. Anyway, that's just my own concerns on that. So I think we have, anybody else before we got a motion on the floor. I think, who made the motion? You, Doug?
Yep.
And who seconded it? Wenda. So you want to read the motion?
I haven't got it written out, but it was basically what the request was to forward that Ruin report, especially the information around the contamination, the missing information, the groundwater, to all those agencies.
I guess I'm just going to ask clarify one question here. And when you second the motion, right?
Yes.
If this motion goes on, I want a cover letter to say this wasn't, none of this information on this here was brought forward by council. It's neutral. It has nothing to do with council, whatever, and I still wonder why we're doing this. But I think a cover letter should say here, we're in support of this because we never hired the person. It's just somebody neutral out there doing this. So anyway, that's my final thing. Anybody else got anything? Wendy, you go ahead.
Yeah, just one more thing. So previously, when we talked about new information, any new information coming forward would cause us to take a pause and re-examine this application. if we don't classify this as new information, what would you say would be considered as new information in order for us to allow us to take a second look at what we've done? What does classify as new information if this isn't it? If we don't consider this motion fails, what exactly do we categorize as new information?
Kevin, do you want to answer that, or you got your hand up there?
Yeah, I just a comment if I could. That is a draft from Mr. Rulon, who is from Peterborough or that area, on information that he was given. And if we're going to make a decision to stop or halt or delay any of this, it should be from the experts that we pay and the experts that we have within our own community. I mean, why are we paying these people? Why do we have them on the payroll if we're not going to listen to them and take their word or their expertise on? I just think if we're going to do this, then you might as well just get rid of Quinte Conservation, get rid of all those folks, because we're not adhering to what they're saying to us. Thank you.
John, you're up next. Can hear you, John.
Yeah, Kevin, we're not halting the project. We're not even supporting Mr. Rulon's opinion. We're simply responding to a citizens group that has got an opinion from a professional hydrogeologist on a controversial issue and sending it to those agencies you refer to that we pay, which we don't actually really pay them, for comment. We're not taking a position here at all. We're kind of the messenger in this case, the formal messenger for a study that's relevant to this project. We're not committing ourselves. We're not even calling the project into question. We're simply passing something on. I think that's just a courtesy to the population that's concerned here.
I'm just going to say one thing back to my point. Why are we the messenger?
Well, because we're the approval authority of final word. Even though we take the advice of the relevant agencies, we issue the building permit. Certainly, it would require MOE or OMAFRA or Quinte Conservation, or possibly, as I say, if my motion is entertained, my next motion, KFL&A Public Health, if they say, whoa, there's something in here we didn't consider, we don't think this project should proceed, that gives us the authority to revoke the building permit. That's how the process works. We're not in a professional position, either as councillors or staff, to make the kind of scientific judgments that those agencies make. They will assess Mr. Rulon's scientific assertions, and they will let us know what they think. We have to be involved at some level as sort of responsible community representatives. It doesn't mean we're advocating one way or the other at this point.
Okay, anybody else? Kevin, you got something, then we're going to call the vote.
Just to John's talk there. You know, this fella is an expert hydrologist. He's never walked the property. He's never been down here to see the property. He's, as far as I'm aware of, but we're accepting his and sending it on through. And that's where I have concern, I guess, with the report itself. But I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, Wendell, this is the last rip at it.
Okay. I'm just adding that, as John said, we're not accepting his report. We're just passing it on for second review. That's all. It does contain some coulds and woulds and might and shoulds, and I have issue with that as well. You know, that he's not being a little more forthcoming than that. But it's still. I think it's our due diligence to make sure that we dotted all our I's and crossed all our T's, and we're not specialists, so we can't for sure say that he's right and they're wrong, or they're right and he's wrong. We don't have the skill and expertise to do that, but I think it's our responsibility to the ratepayers, and certainly and to Mr. Slack, to feel confident, although I'm sure he does, and I feel confident in his abilities to be an expert farmer as well. But it would be really reassuring to have someone look at this report and to come back and say, this is still a good project, proceed. It's just that one more look, it's giving us that one more opportunity to feel good about the decisions that we've made so far. And I feel confident in the decisions we've made so far. But based on this draft report, even with the shoulds and coulds and maybes, it would be, I'd sleep even a little better if those agencies would take a look at his thoughts and come back to us and say, no, we're still good with this. I would feel better about it, honestly.
Okay, Sherry, you had your hand up and that's it. Go ahead.
I just wanted to quickly say that we've already heard that the reports have been forwarded on. So by having us send it again, that's just, I feel like our own staff time and money spent on this has been, I can't even imagine how many hours have been spent on it. And if we already know they have the reports, you can bet they're going to let us know as soon as anything comes up. So I just don't understand the point. Thank you.
Okay, we got a motion on the floor. I guess we all sort of know what it is. I guess, Doug, you sort of sent it in support of council to these agencies. Am I roughly close on that?
Yes, send it to the agency to have those agencies review the report to see if it's consistent or if they have any concerns, that they agree with any of the concerns that have been raised.
Okay.
And I would say it's specifically groundwater, the E. coli accommodation, and missing well reports.
So we're sending this report to the people that already got it.
Yeah.
Am I right on this? Okay. Anyway, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor of who's in favor of the motion? All in favor of the motion? Hands up. 3. Who opposed the motion? Motion's lost. Go ahead, Don. You had another motion.
Okay, so I would move that we ask the relevant agencies, namely OMAFRA, Ministry of the Environment, and Quinte Conservation, if they have received that report, which we know they have, and would they please give us their comments on that report?
Wait, so we have a motion there, second by Sherry. Any questions, comments? Yeah, I have no problem with that at all. Like I say, but so we're going to have moved by John, second by Sherry, that they give a report back from them. Right, John?
That first of all, asking them if they've received that report.
Yep.
And if so, if they could give us their comments on it, and if they have not received it, to have them ask us to send it to them, or ask the group to send it to them, whatever it is.
Okay, good enough. Okay, fine. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor of the motion? The motion is carried. Okay, back to you, John.
Okay, and I would further move that because there are water quality and testing concerns raised in that report, that it should be sent to KFL&A Public Health for comment, because we know that they do not have that report. And in addition, that all the relevant applications and approvals that have already been received by council be sent to KFL&A Public Health for their comment.
Okay, you sort of got me lost on that, John. I know you're saying to KFL&A, right?
Yeah, send the report, the Ruland report, and all the documentation relevant to the original application be sent to KFL&A Public Health to ask if they have concerns about risks to well water quality based on all the information we have.
That was through OMAFRA, Quinte Conservation, that one. That's the group you're talking about?
To send all the relevant application information from Slack Family Farms and the comments by OMAFRA, MOE, and Quinte Conservation on to KFL&A Public Health for their comment.
Wenda?
Second.
Second the motion. Any questions or comments? Kevin?
Didn't KFL&A already have their say, John, when it was They did the site plan?
I don't know, Jason, did they?
Yeah, through you, I just to provide that clarification, KFL&A has been a part of the processing of the application from the onset. They've received all the technical circulations as part of the review. So the information that they would need that's new would be the Ruland report prepared by or submitted by Mark Oliver and the CCE.
Thank you. Then my motion will be to restrict the documentation to be sent to KFL&A Public Health to the Ruland report for comment.
Okay, everybody understand the motion? All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Yep. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Go ahead, John.
Further, I would move that we send the Ruland report to XCG, who have already done an independent review of the documentation that we have so far for their comment and response or rebuttal.
I guess I can say, yeah, sure. Okay. I want to ask you a question in there, John. Who's going to second that? Or do you have, Wenda?
Yep.
Okay, fine. Yeah. I guess if these agencies want to review this, John, and there's dollars to it, like KCG, because they were a third party, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. And we paid for their report. I think we paid something, or we haven't been billed yet, but I expect it will cost us a couple of $1,000s. I've had private correspondence that for a fairly small amount of money, they would give a response to the Ruland draft.
I guess, yeah. I guess that's something that the council will have to be in favor of if we're going to spend money.
That's why I'm making a motion.
I like.
Do you want to set a limit? I'll set a limit. Let's set the limit at $500. Just for the sake of argument.
Yeah, because it's just better if we got something on the books. That's all I'm saying, instead of going hog wild. Kevin?
It seems to me that we voted not to send it to the agencies in question, or some of them, and now we're just running through the list and voting to send it to some of these agencies or people. So I don't know. I just I still think that we've heard from these groups, and if the concerned citizens want to send it to them, then I would go for it, send it to them. But I think, as far as council and our constituencies' tax money, I think we did our due diligence, and I think we're just running back through the mill again. And if another draft comes up after this draft, and we have to do it all again and again, that's my position. Thank you.
Go ahead, John.
Democracy isn't easy. When you have a hot issue like this one is, it can get messy. And I think we want to make sure that we don't leave any stone unturned. XCG isn't one of those agencies that we voted down initially or originally not to send the report to. XCG is a private engineering firm that we hired. And as yet, we haven't heard their response to the Ruland report. What possible harm is there to spend a few $100s just to make sure we have thoroughly investigated all the possible commentary and response that we can get on this issue?
Wenda?
John, even though I seconded the motion, I do want to add.
Wenda's gone.
Wendy, you froze up.
Yeah, Wendy froze up, yeah. Brian, you there to see what?
Less.
Okay,
there she is.
Yeah, you froze up there, Wenda. Start again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Well, you couldn't hear you before. Start again.
Okay. Even though I seconded the motion, I do want to ask John why he made the decision to have XCG as the third-party review, and as opposed to an outside expert in this area that would not have any stake in the game. So, an outside firm. why did you choose XCG as?
You mean originally or on this motion?
No, now with this motion.
Well, because they've already familiarized themselves with all the details of the project. They've already written a report on it. If we go to an outside firm, we'll have to spend the money that we already spent on XCG and then some. So it would simply be cost prohibitive.
Okay, so John made a motion. Do we have a seconder on that?
It was me.
Oh, sorry. Okay, any more discussion?
Yeah, I
So-
had,
Go ahead, Doug.
oh, okay. Well, the question was asked, why are we doing this? Well, the concerned citizens and the residents of Aaronsville and Neville's Point, they're taxpayers, they're ratepayers. They have as much right to ask us to work on their behalf as anybody else. So that's why we're doing it. We're representing everybody, not just a certain portion. So,
I guess I'll just tell you one thing there. They represent a lot of people, but there's a lot of other people here too that are, like as Mark said, is on the other side of the coin.
is that not what I just said?
No, you didn't. You said they represent people, but I said there's people there too that have faith in our decision going through our ministries that did this. Anyway, we have a motion on the floor with a $500 limit go to XCG. Right, John?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor of the motion? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oppose the motion? 3 against. So motion's carried. Anything else? Okay, so I guess, well, thanks, Mark, and
Thank you very much.
we have a motion to receive the report. Moved by Debbie, second by John. All in favor? Carried. Hey, Brian, did you get those figures in that we were just done?
I did, Your Worship.
Okay, how's this, are they zoomed out of the meeting here now?
They will be at present. The co-hosts are going to ensure, yep. So they should be out of the meeting now after their delegation. And it's just remaining staff and council present for the meeting.
Okay, so we'll move on. Bylaws and resolutions. Bylaw to establish and term control bylaw within the township of Stone Mills to prohibit a cultivation of cannabis. You can do that, Brian? Or Jason? I'll give him a minute here, guys.
Sorry, Your Worship, I'm just getting caught up with the motions and such.
Yeah, okay, you okay with all them?
I am, yes. I've been working with staff, building and planning staff over the past 2 weeks in response to an ongoing inquiry and growing concern from a management perspective. Since the inception of legalized cannabis, the township has taken the position and been formally asked to take a stance on whether they would permit retail outlets inside the municipality. Council at that time took that position that they would allow those. And as such, now the next step, the next progression is the production and cultivation of cannabis in municipality. So I've been working with our staff in response to a large number of inquiries. We have growing concern, and I'll share some of the concerns with that there's a large portion of large vacant pieces of land that have been inquired. Jake and Jason are both here this evening and can speak to the elaboration as to how many calls they're getting. Basically, any property over 50 acres with a residential dwelling on it as being inquired through Toronto-based real estate agents and seeking clarification on the municipality's position for cannabis cultivation. At present, for council's benefit, we have 4 grow ops inside the municipality. There's no position in any of the reports this evening.
Mute your mics, people.
Go ahead, Jason.
There's 4 operations that are presently operating within the township. We are getting increased concern with regards to debris in the area, odor issues, as well as just general concern for activity based on the large size of the operation. So the concern from staff comes from the basis that the Health Canada has been given the authority to provide medical certificates for anything over 4 plants for medicinal purposes. But in extreme cases, some of those certificates are amounting to like 4,000 plants per person. So in our case in the township, only one of the 4 known locations have actually gone through the proper steps to obtain building permits for any of the structures that are on the property, as well as provide the notification. So in line, the problem is the municipality doesn't know where these are. And certainly they don't know how to regulate them as far as distance separation, noise, odor, or any sort of responsive communication with neighbors. So the latest, the most concerning was a situation last week where one of the locations had ran 600 feet of PVC to draw water out of a local waterway, and was running from the marsh, yielding a large knife, being very suspicious with the Blue Earth Solar people on the Ratty Road location. They had essentially ran their infrastructure to start drawing water from the protected waterway that's in that area, and after being located, had removed it 2 hours later. All of that is starting to build some anxiety inside the community to neighboring property owners. And again, I reiterate that there's no staff position on the production and cultivation. The interim control this evening, the bylaw that's being proposed this evening, is for council's consideration to allow a 12-month period for council to complete a planning review to determine how, if, and where council will permit production of and cultivation of cannabis. Some neighboring municipalities, I know there's been some correspondence through residents and council members that have indicated that an odor, a nuisance bylaw with odor control being its prime focus, being passed. That is something that could come out of the interim control bylaw review, but without having a significant amount of, public consultation or an opportunity for input. The grounds to create an interim, a nuisance bylaw for odor is just not to the point where I would say that it's founded enough to implement that right away without doing an extensive review. Likewise, there's a number of other provisions with regards to light waste, noise, the ability to draw water, minimum distance separations. This is very similar to the process that we took on when we did the solar project. In 2016, we were inundated with a number of solar proposals, and council mandated management to start working with our legal team to determine how and if we would accept solar proposals in the township. We're trying to mirror that process, give ourselves a 12-month period to just consider how and if and where council would be willing to host these types of locations in the community.
Okay, any questions? Go ahead, Wenda. Here, can't hear you.
Just one consideration. I like everything that you've had to say. I get it. I'm not a farmer, so those of you who are farmers could speak to this better, but typically the time that you would put in a crop would be April, May, I would think. So if we put a full 12-month halt on this, the people with the intention of doing this are going to miss 3 months of that growing season. So I wonder if we want to make it a 10-month or a 9-month reprieve in order to allow, should this be passed as a bylaw even, but in order to allow these new fields to be cultivated in a timely seasonal manner. So not 12 months, but maybe 10 or 9 or whatever the farmers would anticipate to be a beneficial time frame for next year.
Councillor Lalande, it's very important to note that the properties that are already actively operating would be granted legal non-conforming status because of their pre-existence prior to the passing of this bylaw. So they just couldn't expand or grow, or any new operations could be there. So there is some protection for individuals that are already operating inside the township. They just can't grow beyond that, but there would be, and there will be anyway, some enforcement discussion with regards to structures without permits, etc. I think from, with Jason being present here, the interim control has a maximum duration of 12 months with the ability to be extended for a 12-month period should council wish. But there's nothing saying that we couldn't be done earlier if the process is expedient and we can come to a solution prior to the end of that 12-month period.
Go ahead, Jason.
Just very quickly, thank you, Your Worship. Just to echo CAO Brooks's comments, the 12-month date that's been presented or prescribed within comes from the Planning Act. The Planning Act stipulates the time frame in which municipalities may use from an interim control bylaw perspective, and that's exactly correct. You have 12 months to complete your investigation/planning work. At the end of your 12-month period, you may seek an extension for an additional 12 months, granted that you've demonstrated progress and you're justifying why additional time is needed. All that to be said, as CAO Brooks mentioned, there is nothing to state that within 7 months you could finish and wrap up your investigative work and come forward with a position from staff. It's more of an upper time frame. Thanks.
Thank you.
Kevin, you had something to say? Turn your mic on.
What you're saying, Brian, is that the people that have already started the growing season can continue and harvest that, but nobody new can come in and start up, and they can't get any bigger than what they are now for the period of 1 year, 12 months. Is that right?
Yeah, so as this, we've been in the research fact-finding situation for the past 30 to 45 days, trying to just do an inventory on where the activity is within our community. Following the decision of council, we've not gone out and had any discussions with any of the property owners until we had a chance to report to council. But the discussion following this would be just a notice recognizing that they are in legal non-conforming status. Take an inventory of what's on the property, whether it's a number of greenhouses or number of acres that are done. Take some discussion with the property owner and let them know that until which time the interim control bylaws lifted, they're limited in being able to grow any larger, as well as there's a requirement for any compliance for issues that are not dealt with. For instance, they need to give notification to the local fire department building and OPP, along with any sort of building permits that are required for structures on that property as well. So it would be an education to those that exist, very clearly saying this is not a prohibition at this time, but it's basically a 12-month hiatus until which time council and planning staff have had the opportunity to do a review and determine the position. A number of our neighboring municipalities have did the nuisance bylaw, but the other one that was an interesting note, the municipality of Tweed, has permitted the use in industrial zoned areas. So they basically wanted it outside of the residential areas. There's a number of different approaches, and I would just like to review those to see how they fit with Stone Mills and have some community consultation to determine where people stand on this issue as well before we report back to council.
Okay, so we're looking for direction on this bylaw. John, do you have your hand up? Can't hear you, John.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Just some of the other ramifications. The bylaw is very brief, and one of its terms is to limit cultivation to 4 plants, which is the federal recreational limitation for personal growing. I don't know much about medical marijuana licenses, but I understand that if someone has a condition that a doctor gives a prescription to for marijuana that is high in CBD, that those people can maybe grow more than 4 plants. I don't know if the prescriptions are for a set amount of cannabis per week or month, or if a prescription includes a provision for growing plants. But it's conceivable that if a person is going to grow plants for medical use, that they might need to grow more than 4. So just to be clear, that person could grow 4 medical marijuana plants, but would have to source, if they needed more than that, marijuana to complete their prescription elsewhere by buying it. Is that correct, Brian?
There's a couple variations to that, Deputy Revise, that I would say. Typical outdoor growth is done during a certain period where weather permits. There are other situations, hydroponics, where indoor growth could exist, where they're just not meant to have any more than 8 plants in their possession at a time. For instance, if I was to have a medical certificate to exceed that, my wife may not have any sort of recreational use, and therefore, technically, there could be 8 between the two. There are some variations, there's some leniency to it. There's, as we referred to, the hydroponics and the weather that's not of the favorable season, along with the summer with regards to the outdoor growth. So there is a continual growth opportunity for individuals that require that. It just might require some alternate consideration rather than just outdoor growth.
Okay, John?
Yeah, just to follow up, if I may. So from what I understand, some of these operations that are establishing themselves in the township are doing so on the basis of medical marijuana licenses. These aren't people who've gone the route, say, of the marijuana company in Napanee, who've received licensing from the government to produce and grow either medical or recreational marijuana. These are people who've got huge prescriptions from doctors somewhere to grow medical marijuana. Is that correct, Brian? Is that what we suspect, or do we have reason to assume that?
That's absolutely our expectations, that there are certificates that have been granted. We're aware of at least 2 that have been listed for individuals to grow over 4,000 plants per person. Health Canada has not taken a position on what we believe to be abusive position for physicians that are creating those certificates, and therefore during this time we would also look to lobby Health Canada to strengthen their oversight or their ability to oversee these operations, to make sure that municipalities and neighboring properties are aware of these operations, and then to make sure that they're above board. I think the long stigma attached with these is criminal activity, and I think the more notification, the more communication that's above board, it may improve that image that comes along with it. And I think that's one of our community concerns that we're getting now, is that they're so secretive, they're so hidden, but there's a certain aspect of criminal activity that's assumed to go along with these growths because they haven't followed that step or those steps required under the licensing. And with physicians creating 4,000 plants on a medical certificate, it's not giving us much teeth for notification for them to ensure that they follow their steps. There's only one, the one on County Road 14. There's one on Roddy Road. There's one on County Road 4. There's one on Clairview. These are already existing, and we only formally have been made aware of one.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have what council want to direct staff to do. Go ahead with the term bylaw.
I'll move with you.
Moved by Doug. Second there on that.
So, Your Worship, in the motion, you will see that there's a requirement for council to direct staff to undertake the planning review. That's a requirement prior to passing the bylaw. I just want to make sure that entire motion is the intent of council to pass in that order.
Council direct management to undertake a land use planning study of the impact of cannabis cultivation, processing, of production, and consider policies to regulate the use within the township. Further, that manager provide notice to the public within 30 days of the passing the interim bylaw to prohibit the cultivation, production of cannabis. Further, that council direct manager to provide notice to the current known operators with notice that the township of Stone Mills hereby prohibits the new or expanded activity during the 1-year probation period. Doug has a motion on the floor and looking for a seconder. Sherry, any more questions? All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Okay, thank you. Okay, the next one will be in a bylaw to authorize the execution of a transfer payment agreement with Her Majesty's Queen Rate, Ontario, as represented by the Ministry of Agriculture and Food, Rural Affairs, under the Rural and Northern Stream Infrastructure Project for the reconstruction of Brock and Durham Streets in Newburgh.
Your Worship, this evening, the bylaw that's here is for the transfer agreement for funds as part of this project. You'll note on the date of correspondence, it's very dated, and the reason it's dated is we were still awaiting response from the province and federal government as to whether they would permit the inclusion of the underground expansion. So this is intentionally late, as we waited to see the approved position with the province to be granted to both the Public Works Manager and ourselves prior to completing this transfer agreement. So this agreement is now formally signing us into the commitment of Brock and Durham, and you will see, you'll receive a report from the Public Works Manager later on that will speak to how that was tendered, broken down, and agreed upon.
So we're looking for a motion on the floor. Moved by Kevin, second by Debbie. And we're looking first, second, third reading, that motion. Okay, all in favor? Carried. Road widening bylaw. Carly, Jason?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Applicant Ryan Daccarel proposed 2 severances on Cutler Road. The application was approved by Committee of Adjustment, and as part of that Committee of Adjustment approval, the applicant's required to convey a component of the public road known as Cutler Road, as well as a portion of the unopened road allowance up the eastern side of those severed lots for future road or transmission. So I just through this bylaw is before you, confirming that Part 3 on Plan 29R 10743 details that that land that would be transferred into the municipality as ownership.
Okay. First, second, third reading. John, Doug, any more questions, comments? All in favor of the motion? Motion carried. Zoning bylaw amendment D052019. This is a Whalen which we had in the public meeting earlier, right, Jason?
That is absolutely correct. 301 Main Street, just south of Newburgh. I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys may have, or any members of council may have, sorry.
Any questions on this? If not, we're looking for a motion first, second, third reading. Moved by John, second by Debbie. All in favor? Carried. Zoning bylaws D02-2020, the Bylaw. That was the small engine place. Go ahead, Jason.
Through you, Erica Barlow, on behalf of T&E Small Engines, in very close proximity to the intersection of County Road 41 and County Road 14, seeking a site-specific bylaw to recognize that small engine repair and sales establishment. If any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions? Look, go ahead, Doug.
No, move.
Okay, first, second, third.
Yep.
Second by Sherry. All in favor? Carried. Zoning bylaw amendment D03-2020. Fittis.
Yep. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Fittis, Mr. and Mrs. Fittis at 148 Gibson Road, essentially the intersection of County Road 1 and Gibson Road. Application to establish a building envelope of a 0.7 hectare parcel and facilitate that severance, with also a recommendation of reducing the minimum provincially significant wetland setback from the Yarker PSW and initiate the construction of a single family dwelling as permitted or provisionally approved by the Committee of Adjustment. Thank you.
Any questions? Looking for first, second, third reading. Moved by Sherry, second by Kevin. All in favor? Carried. Backyard hen bylaw proposed second draft. Go ahead, Jason.
Okay. Thank you.
We're into the chickens.
We're here we go. As many of you will recall, we brought a first draft of the backyard hen bylaw to council a couple months ago to seek public input as well as the input of council to ensure that some agricultural uses, specifically backyard hens, may be permitted at a greater scale than throughout the township than what is currently in restrictions pertaining to only those parcels which are zoned rural and make up the minimum size requirements of the zoning bylaw. So the backyard hen chicken bylaw is consistent with some of our other municipalities in establishing urban agriculture. And through our first public information / council meeting via Zoom, we received some input as it relates to the bylaw. Staff have revised the bylaw according to the input received to date, and I'll run through those revisions quickly with you now, and a summary can then be provided out just so that we're all aware of what those changes are. And happy to look at some additional changes / refinements as we move forward. So on the first page of our draft bylaw, the definition of a hen was amended. The definition amended to mean a female chicken kept for its eggs or meat. By amending the definition to include such, it would incorporate both meat hens as well as laying hens. And if you recall, the original bylaw had a definition which was tied to age. A 4-month age was a tipping point, and there was a concern about small chicks, and the number of them would then surpass if it would surpass your maximum number permitted on a property. So by removing or amending that definition, it's one that gives consideration to twofold, gives consideration to the hens and the chicks. It also gives consideration to the meat and the laying hens. I acknowledge that Councillor Davis and I had a good conversation this morning regarding this, but I'll let Councillor Davison provide that later on. Moving on to page 2, I do not see any amendment that was made on this page aside from section 2.4. There's an error in section 2.4 that still makes reference to a refund of a permit fee. So as you'll recall through that first discussion, there was the removal of a permit fee entirely, and it's no longer applicable. So there was just an administrative error here where we will address that and remove that reference of a refund. So that's all on page 2. Moving through to page 3, section 3.5C, there is currently the prohibition as it relates to roosters being kept throughout the municipality within its backyard hen bylaw. There is now consideration being given through conversations between staff, members of the public, and council that would be amended so that roosters may be permitted on parcels located outside of hamlets as per our official plan designation, whereas all the parcels within hamlets would still be prevented from accommodating a rooster. So I just wanted to point that out. Continuing on section 3.5, 3.5F and 3.5G on the bylaw in your agenda tonight we have added in 2 provisions which were mistakenly not included in our original first draft provided to council, in that we want to ensure it's consistent with our general provisions of our zoning bylaw, in that we have minimum separation distances from water bodies and wells. So it's just bringing that again to making sure that we're being considerate from land use planning policies and separation distances. Councillor Richmond, jump in.
The G portion there, hen coops and sons shall be limited to 30 meters, 90 feet from wells. Would that not restrict a lot of people in the hamlets? Because they can't have them out in front of the house, has to be in the back. If the well's in the backyard, they're out of luck because 30 meters, they're not going to have that kind of room. I wouldn't suspect in some cases for sure.
Absolutely fair comment. Happy to discuss. It is going to be a challenge in locating those agricultural uses in a hamlet if that is a stipulation. It is, as you can acknowledge, based on well water being what we require in our only way of servicing some of those more dense areas, and looking to ensure that that's preserved. So it's something that can be discussed, but as mentioned, that's that's just standard sort of from a ministry guiding perspective.
Okay.
Anybody got any other? Are you done, Jason?
I can keep,
No.
I think, let me just keep going here, sorry. Moving on to page 4, there was 2 deletions that you may note. One was the, I believe Councillor Milligan, great comment related to public nuisance and clucking, excessive clucking. That was on our first meeting. That's been removed, as well as home slaughter. Deputy Reeve Wise may recall that. Those were both removed and being absent from this second draft. Section 3.5R, just carrying through, there was amendment, modification, made where the original draft made reference to other municipal bylaws as opposed to the Environmental Protection Act. So that's talking as it relates to the management and storage of manure. We don't have bylaws in the township that regulate manure storage for any agricultural use. That's obviously that's OMAFRA's world. And the EPA Act is one that defines where that may and may not occur. So that's that reference has been updated. The only other component of this, which has not been amended for you tonight in the second draft, but I do want to amend, is section 5, the offense and penalty provisions. I believe it's more concise, clean, and simple to refine that to speak to enforcement per municipal bylaw enforcement, consistent with all the rest of our bylaw enforcement throughout the municipality as it relates to zoning infractions, as it relates to noise bylaw complaints, and any of that. And this bylaw I see as being no different. So municipal bylaw enforcement as being a reference to issuing the enforcement component as opposed to a specific offenses and penalty provisions, I believe is more appropriate for us here in Stone Mill. So just again, those are the small revisions that have been made in the second draft from the commentary received from the first. And I'm happy to take on more questions, comments, suggestions, or try and answer any questions that maybe have.
Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, Jason and I had a good conversation this morning, and there's been a number of revisions to it. I think there's still 2 outstanding issues that I don't see have been changed, Jason. The one, I hear you say that no permits are being required, but the draft that's in front of us still shows the permits. So I'd like to clarify that if we don't require permits, we need to remove that section or any reference to permits.
Yeah, sorry,
Go ahead.
And I just wanted to mention that I have that as a note because the bylaw originally was drafted in that we would have a permit at the onset when someone is seeking to establish hens on their property with a coop that's issued through the municipality with a fee and then with an annual renewal. There was conversation that was confirming that it's unnecessary. Sort of an annual renewal is not necessary, and that the initial permit may or may not be necessary. So this draft leaves in the fact that an original permit for your initial onset of those hens would be required. It was discussion, agreed. We can go to the total other end of the spectrum and run this very similar to our enforcement on zoning bylaw infractions, where because the size of a coop doesn't facilitate a building permit, we scrap the permit requirement entirely for a hen coop. We take out the component that you notify your neighbors and you confirm to the municipality that you have notified your neighbors, and that we only then act as municipal staff through an enforcement issue should it arise in the future. So I think that's to your point, Councillor Davison, of our conversation and sort of the direction. I'm happy to go that route. I think it is consistent with what we do in other areas that don't require that tipping point for building permit. Just the bylaw has not been amended from our conversation this morning.
Yeah, okay, so, and the reason I raise that is this. First of all, I believe for every chicken coop in the township, we're creating a nightmare of work for our building inspector, quite honestly. And as long as we have the requirements, the conditions there that we can refer to, if there is a problem issue here or there, then you go the route of enforcement. So that's why I think it's just unnecessary to have everybody applying for a permit. I think it's just a make work project, to be honest with you, that's not required. Okay, and back to the age of the chickens. My concern there is, and I was quite happy with the 4 months on the hen, because people buy meat chickens, they raise them for 10 to 12 weeks and then they're done away with. So they didn't qualify under the 4 months. Also, people that are raising a number of chickens for eggs for sale and that also have, with a rooster, have laying hens that set on the nest. And when we have a restriction of 18 chickens, what happens when you get 2 or 3 hens sitting on nests that have 10 eggs? You exceed the count. So I think we needed to kind of give that leeway that under 4 months and leave it at, a mature hen, say at 4 months, and call that a hen and forget about the chicks and the meat hens. Anyways, that was my thought. I'd like to hear other people's thoughts on those two subjects.
Any other comments, anybody? Kevin?
Just to go back, Jason, to that 30 meters. I'm just wondering, is that something that the other communities have, or it just seems to me that we're taking it away from a lot of people. But if it's needed that far away from a well, then I accept that. But
through you, 30 is the recommendation. I've seen communities in rural, so I'll use Rideau Lakes, for example, rural community hamlets, unserviced, similar to ours, their bylaws drop to a 15.
okay, that may be something we want to look at as well, because I think it just takes it out of the realm of a lot of people. So thank you.
Go ahead, John. Can't hear you, John.
Sorry, isn't the setback, Jason, from a well, between a well and a septic system 15 meters?
50 feet. Jake can confirm building code requirement. Yes, I believe it is.
Yeah, so I can't see 30 meters for 6 hens or 18 hens and only 15 for a septic system. I think 15 sounds reasonable. Having said that, how many people let their dogs run around the yard and do their business within a few feet of the well? You can't regulate everything.
Exactly.
Yeah, so there's actually 2 setbacks. There's it's 50 feet for a drilled well that's got a casing that's 6 meters long. And if you've got your old school dug well, or a blasted well, then that's 100 feet setback. Whereas the drill well is 50 feet. That's got a casing at least 6 meters long. Anyways, just thought I'd
Thanks,
add
Jake.
that. Yeah.
Okay, anything else for Jason on this? John, do you have something?
Well, just to Jake's information is pertinent. So I think 15 meters from a drilled well, and whatever 100 feet works out to in meters, I guess that's close to 30 for a dug or blasted well. Let's stick to the kind of the existing, just to be consistent, the existing setbacks from a contaminant source. And may I go on, Eric? I've got a few
Sure, go ahead.
comments.
Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
John.
thank you. Okay. I'll just let Jason's obviously writing something down there. I'll just give him a second here.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. So where in the bylaw, I think it implies that if you've got more than 4 hectares that this bylaw does not apply to you, but can you refer to the specific language which exempts people with more than 4 hectares from the stipulations of the bylaw, Jason?
Yeah, I've got to find it. Thank you.
Because I just wasn't able to interpret it in plain language that if I've got 5 hectares or more, I mean, obviously, we don't want the Rainics or the Embreys having to come and get a permit to keep laying hens, right? So let's just make sure that's clear, or me for that matter.
Your worship, I think permitted zoning areas would also take that into consideration as well, Deputy Revise.
Yeah, and I understand that, but that's not clear in plain language to most people. There are going to be people
So I'm
with,
just
yeah.
section. Sorry, I don't
Go
know.
ahead.
Section 3.5S. The regulations set out in 3.7A to P and section 3.7S do not apply to any property zoned to permitted agricultural uses.
And I couldn't find section 3.7.
That was probably a, so let me, yeah. That should have been amended when we moved to, so from the previous first draft to the second, 3.7 became 3.5.
That's kind of what I thought. So,
Yeah,
so
sorry
that
about
provision is self-referential to 3.5.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay.
It
So
should,
that,
to be clear, that should just, I'll move that down and put a notwithstanding clause at the bottom that says notwithstanding any of the above, and then we're not going to get into a reference issue
right.
again.
Okay, that's good. That'll make it clear. And I guess the other things I had were just little typos and stuff, which I'm sure you'll clear up.
If you can send those on, John, sorry to
Yeah, I will. I won't take up time on typos. But just to what Doug was talking about, so when it says no roosters, it's okay to be raising meat birds that are male, because it refers to hen as being for egg laying or meat. But of course, if you get a mixed flock of day-old chicks, they're both male and female. Now, if you're butchering them by 12 weeks, they really haven't started to crow yet, so it's not really an issue. But is it okay for people to get a flock of mixed meat chicks and raise them for slaughter?
That was the thought process, Deputy Revise. To be honest with you, the thought was the rooster is the noise generator per se, where the meat hens running up to that threshold of the growth, and then moving on, is not going to cause that. So yes.
Okay. Very, very good. Thank you.
I would think your rooster is your alarm clock in the morning, which a lot of people don't like in the hamlet.
Well, I live close to some roosters that think it's morning all day.
Right, so anything going on further here, can we have a motion for this be the second reading? Moved by John, second by Kevin. Any more questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Motion carried. Thank you, Jason. Okay. We're into the noise bylaw now. You're getting a workout tonight, Jason.
Thanks. First day back from a week off, so here we go. We're hitting the ground running.
You won't be taking any more weeks off.
No. Okay.
Yeah, noise bylaw update. Go ahead. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Through you. Many of us are familiar with the history related to the noise bylaw, as well as the noise bylaw complaints that have been received in the hamlet of Yarker, as it relates to the circling of ATVs on two distinct properties, but basically a contravention to a noise bylaw, and a noise bylaw that's currently in place that what some would summarize to say lacks teeth as it relates to the enforcement, and it may, as much as we may be able to say lacks teeth from an enforcement perspective, it may be able to be summarized to say it lacks clear direction from the ways in which we're able to limit and regulate noise on a property. So without getting into the specifics of a complaint and the specifics to the property and a deputation in which council has heard and updated commentary in which council has heard, I think we're all familiar, and I'm happy to answer questions about that, but there has been amendments made to, or requested to be made, sorry, to a noise bylaw that would sufficiently address some concerns that are causing hardship on certain members of our municipality. We originally went to our legal counsel to seek insight as to how we may regulate or amend our noise bylaw in the township so that it would sufficiently address any of those concerns. And there were 5 options that were presented. That report was presented to council. And from that report, we basically did more work. So we've done some more work and looked at some other municipalities and come up with some better sort of options from a staff and a legal counsel perspective as to how some simple, relatively simple additions and amendments to our existing noise bylaw that could be updated would address the hardships in which some members of the community are experiencing. So I'll just very quickly go through those for you. The noise bylaw draft is in your package for tonight's consideration, and the noise bylaw on page 2 has incorporated a definition of persistence. So by adding a definition of persistence to mean an aggregated period of at least 20 minutes out of any 60-minute period can be summed up to say that any persistent noise that's causing hardship that exceeds 20 minutes in any given hour can be then traced to this definition and say it's defined as persistence, and then that's causing excessive noise or vibration that would degrade your quality or tranquility of life and cause nuisance. That's the change from a definition perspective. I just then would take you to section 3, subsection 16 of the noise bylaw that you have in the package, which speaks to prohibitions by time and place. So there's a host of just different prohibitions that are listed and stated within the bylaw. For example, persistent yelling and shouting and hollering and singing, the operation of a motorized conveyance on other than a highway. Those types of uses or prohibitions are defined, and then on the to match, there's a plate and a time that also matches with that with that prohibition. Section 16, subsection 3, subsection 16, we've added in the persistent operation of an off-road vehicle on any property in a hamlet as identified within the Township of Stone Mills official plan. So what that does is really give you a definition to say within our hamlets, in our densest areas, in our mixed use communities of our hamlets, at all times, you may not operate a vehicle that is considered to be persistent. And we've now defined persistent as I just went through. So giving us some very good direction from that perspective. Moving forward to section 5, subsection 4, the bylaw was added to essentially add an exemption. And you'll recall from some of our original or previous council meeting conversations, there was question about the regulation of a use on a given property that may be defined as persistent, which would then alternatively adversely affect a use in another part of the municipality, which we inadvertently didn't want to adversely affect. For example, the boat races. So this exemption, section 5, subsection 4, allows for an exemption to be granted from council. And if it's a reoccurring exemption, then it's one that can be granted by council on a reoccurring basis, essentially. Okay, those are the 3 or 4 major changes to our existing noise bylaw, in which staff have amended to address the commentary of members of the public, as well as further the information and the direction in which council directed management to advance with. Now, just the question that many of you may have is, well, that's great, Mr. Sands, you've updated a draft noise bylaw. Now, why is your recommendation that we not adopt your nice new noise bylaw that further defines persistence and exemptions, et cetera, et cetera? The reason that the recommendation is as such is it's following the advice of our legal counsel as it relates to issuing an update or amendment to a bylaw that could be considered as being passed in bad faith. And when we use the terminology passed in bad faith from a legal perspective, from our legal counsel, it's one that's passed as opposed to being passed at the greater good of the public, or one that's a bylaw that's going to be passed that's township wide, or in this case, very more so hamlet specific wide. I can't say to you as counsel, and I can't advise to you as counsel, that I've received multiple inquiries and multiple concerns or multiple recommendations from members of the public throughout the municipality that the bylaw is failed and the bylaw needs to be amended accordingly to support or to allow for the better enforcement across our municipality. So for that reason, my recommendation is as it states. That said, I'm confident in the bylaw. I think the bylaw, with the additions that have been built in, provide better acknowledgement to how we may advance as a municipality, how we may better our enforcement capabilities, etc. It's where it's coming from, if that makes sense. So I'm happy to answer questions related to the bylaw that has been amended and is before you tonight.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Jason, has the people that have had the problem, is it working out for them now? Has things changed for that couple?
So through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Thompson, Public Works Manager Thompson, and I had visited all members of the public who were involved in the greater issue, explained the situation, explained how we wanted to sort of combat the concern, how to work and move forward as a group, as opposed to writing bylaws or amending this to address. And from that meeting, I have not heard from any member of the public to say it's worked positively or it's worked negatively. I can't speak for Public Works Manager Thompson. Maybe he has, but I really don't have a good answer for you, Mr. Richmond.
So you're saying no,
I haven't had any.
not to change the bylaw as it stands, and we just move forward and deal with it as we go. Is that what I'm hearing from you, Jason?
Yeah, my recommendation is to not amend the bylaw. However, if council chooses to amend the bylaw, I'm confident that the bylaw that's presented to you tonight in draft form for your consideration is effective in what it ought to achieve.
Don't you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. I mean, the question here, in fact, related back to the old bylaw. The old bylaw had words of unnecessary, unusual, and excessive noise. Unfortunately, there was no description as to what that meant. So the words were useless. And they really needed to have a proper definition, something that a concerned citizen could work with if they had an issue. The draft bylaw that Jason has presented, I think, is excellent. I think it goes a long ways to solving or meeting the need of the public. But I disagree with the recommendation that don't pass it because it's only one event. How many events does it take before you make a change to anything? 10, 100? I mean, we only got 7,000 residents in the township. So if there's an issue and you can fix it, why not? So I disagree. I would like to see this bylaw actually adopted. I think it's an excellent bylaw, Jason.
Go ahead, Jason.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the only, I would just want to add to Councillor Davison's comment, the third whereas clause in the bylaw, you'll see the draft bylaw in front of you, it has remained unchanged. That condition that speaks to free from unusual, unnecessary, excessive noise and vibration, that's consistent, that's still within. And I just point that out to say that Councillor Davison's comment of the additions that staff have built into the bylaw to speak to that point are true. That was the intent behind this. I'm speaking solely from a legal perspective of that recommendation as opposed to the bylaw itself.
Yeah, the persistent recommendation, I think, addressed that issue.
I just gonna say something here. I think if we can monitor this, because you get into the hamlets, out of Tamworth there's pieces of land out there that are 75 acres that are in the hamlet out there. I mean, if somebody's down in the far end on a bike, a little trail bike for an hour, I mean, are you gonna, you're gonna get down and stop him when he's not really harming anybody? I mean, I like to, continue monitor the situation and see if these people can work it out. Because we're making one person complaining for the whole township, and some of these, like you say, there's 50, 75 acres down there in the hamlet that's not being used, and I can't see any problem with that. Go ahead, I think, John, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Well, in that particular case that you're talking about, Eric, no one's ever going to complain then. That wouldn't be a problem. We're not going to, the bylaw isn't to stop people using ATVs. The bylaw is to stop people persistently riding ATVs so close to someone's residence that it's causing a nuisance. So your example wouldn't apply. I agree with Doug. I think this bylaw addresses a situation that could easily arise elsewhere in the township. And I can specifically think of an incident in my neighborhood 3 or 4 years ago when there was a young lad that was doing exactly the same thing down the road and was annoying quite a few neighbors. And it was just a kind of case of the community just trying to keep the peace because they knew the kid was going to graduate soon. But yeah. I could see this situation arising elsewhere, and I see it as a proactive piece of legislation that's arisen because of one specific incident that could occur again. So I would certainly support passing the bylaw.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I, on the other hand, don't support it, and I'd like to make the motion that we leave it as is, and because of the legal side of it, and just for the simple reason it was one person and one issue, and it sounds like maybe that's been solved. Hopefully it has, and if it hasn't, then maybe we, down the road we do something. But I think because of the legal side of it, I think we should move on. I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Have a seconder? Look for a seconder? No seconder? Call again, no seconder? Did you have your hand up, Wenda? Oh, sorry, I had that web. Okay, no, we no seconder on that motion.
Okay.
Motion defeated. Doug?
Motion to approve the draft.
Second by Wenda. Any more comments? I guess I'm going to have to agree with Kevin on this, or I can't support that motion because I think it's one incident here, and it seems to be going pretty good right now. That's going to affect a lot of people in the township. That if there's a bylaw there, it's there, whether somebody wants to push it or not. Anyway, we'll call for the vote. All in favor of the motion? 1, 2, 3. Okay, oppose the motion? 1, 2, 3, 4. Motion's defeated. Okay, anything else, Jason?
I don't think so.
Okay, all right, we'll move on to the next one.
Not enough talking tonight.
Okay, good enough, thank you. Treasurer Bouchard,
Your worship, we should have a motion to receive the report.
sorry, yeah. Have a motion to receive the report moved by John, second by Kevin. All in favor? Motion is carried. Stone Mills accounts payable, Christina.
Yep. So you have your month of June accounts payable reports in front of you. I don't have anything else.
Anybody, any questions or comments about the accounts payable? If not, can I have a motion to accept the report and pay the bills? Moved by Debbie, second by Wenda. All in favor? Motion is carried.
Thank you.
Okay, acting fire chief Thompson, Brock and Durham Street reconstruction tender results.
Thank you, Reeve Smith. This one's actually under the Public Works Manager, not the Fire Chief.
Well, it says acting fire
So,
chief.
I know, it's wrong.
Okay, all right.
That was a
All right.
little dig at our CIO.
I'm all right. Okay, fire away, since you're the fire chief.
So without getting too far into the history of this, it started back in 2018, actually. And I think we were denied a couple of funding programs prior to that for this project. So in 2019, we were successful. We advertised on Bid and Go, our website, and we met Article 19.10 of the procurement bylaw. We met all three requirements to reduce the advertising days down to 25 from 40. Other than that, we found we got some good numbers. R.W. Tomlinson was the lowest. When we put the tender out, we split it into two sections, a Part A and a Part B, which gave us the underground work that wasn't covered in the funding, that we have to cover that portion of the work. And Part A being the above ground, which is the curb and gutter, sidewalk, asphalt, and sub-base material. So we're looking to move forward and award Tomlinson with the project.
Any questions or comments for anybody? If not, we need it. Do you have something, Doug?
Yeah, I agree we need it, Eric, but I think we should have an explanation of the cost, how it's gonna break down for us, and where we're gonna find our portions of it.
So listed in the report, it's we're going to use, last year, if everyone recalls, we got double the gas tax. So for the portion of the underground that we have to fund, we're going to use the gas tax, and then out of the reserve, our reserves, we'll cover the 16.67% of the, I believe it was 600 and some thousand for the above ground, 692.41.
Okay, Doug?
I'll move acceptance and we
Move
proceed.
accept.
And we'll break down, it's mentioned in the report as well, we'll split that engineering cost and site supervision on a 80-20 split. We've already spoke with OMAFRA. They understand the process that we're looking for.
Okay, Sherry, you second that motion? Yep. Any questions? All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. 2020 loader tender results. Go ahead, Jeff.
So we put this tender out for the entire duration of 40 days on our website. We received three tenders back in, and the lowest being from Bob Marks, New Holland. It was a high lift, so it's an HL 940 Hyundai with a Cummins motor. The prices actually come in a lot cheaper than budgeted and a lot cheaper than the other competitors thought as well. So people that farm may know they're setting up shop in Napanee, so right on 41 Highway in Selby. So maybe that's why they were a little aggressive on their pricing too.
Okay, we have a recommendation in front of us. Kevin, move the recommendation.
I'll make that motion.
Anybody have any questions? You have a question, John, there? I should ask first.
No, I was just seconding it, but I would ask Jeff, when are they going to open to the public at that dealership? It says opening soon since March.
I think on their website, I think they might be in now.
Oh,
I
is
think
that
on their
right?
website shows they're there, I believe.
Good.
Yeah.
All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. 2020 tandem truck tender results.
So in the budget, we had replacement of 2 tandems. I believe last council, I declared them as surplus. They're kind of scrap and to be towed off site. They're not running. So this tender was put out April 28th. We received 2 tenders back, one from Rush Trucks and the other one from, isn't that awful? Premier Truck. We got too many tenders on the go. And again, we had, I believe, 300,000 budgeted for each truck, and they come in just under that, not including the tax, obviously, but we'll be just over.
Any questions for Jeff? Looking for the council to approve the purchase of 2 6-ton trucks. Looking for a motion, moved by Sherry, second by Doug. All in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, down items for information, notice of a pending retirement verbal. You gonna look after that, Jeff, or?
Yeah, I can do that. We had an employee come last week with the desire to retire, which is excellent because he's of the age, he's worked a few years beyond his retirement age. So he thought now was the time. So at the end of the month, he's going to retire. And I believe, Christina might be able to correct me, but I think he had close to 30 years in. So 29, I believe. Jack McCumber.
Okay, good enough.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and we have some letters of support. Well, this is about the pig farm here. I may go. We have all them. Anybody want to pull
Before you
it?
go ahead,
Go ahead.
before you go ahead, should we just reference that retirement that if there, we should be recognizing the service and that of a long-term employee?
I would think you're going to look after that, aren't you, Jeff? Give us some forward on this.
Yeah, we'll get him something for his retirement and probably get a card. I know if anyone knows Jack, he's not up for parties in a crowd. So,
Yeah.
Feel good to say thank you.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
Maybe
Okay.
we'll get a card from council as well, maybe to sign.
Perfect. And I guess going on down through, we have letters of support and letters against the Slack Family Farm. So anybody want to discuss any of them or receive them and move on?
Just received, we've been through it.
Okay. Okay. Move. Make a motion to receive. Second by Sherry. Anybody want to pull any out? All in favor of the motion? Motion carried. Okay. New business statements from members. Seeing none. Oh, sorry, John. Your mic's off, John.
Yes, yeah. Just, I don't know if anyone noticed, but Quinte Conservation has declared a level 1 moisture level, water emergency. Well, not emergency. It's an acknowledgement that things are getting dry, basically, and a request that people voluntarily reduce their water usage by 10%. I don't think too many people are watering lawns at this point, but we'll just have to monitor that. And if we don't get widespread and continuous rain over the next couple of weeks, you might see that move to level 2.
Yeah. I was wondering, John, if this gets any serious there, can they let us know and we can put it on our website now, like just to maybe let a lot of the people know, or have they already done it?
Yeah, it's on their website, and of course I get their mailings, but I think that's a good idea, Eric. And I'll just move that if that's required, or ask Brian, can we get Quinte's drought level information onto our website as a link or something?
Yeah, we can, Your Worship. Unfortunately, that was just received after the deadline. Normally, we would list the level 1 low water advisory, which in this case is what it was, and it just happened to be after we received the deadline for the agenda. So we will post something on our website just to make sure that's public knowledge.
Thank you.
If I believe it's on our website.
Is it on there now?
Yeah.
And I think the key thing is to keep people posted, because a lot of people don't really realize that if it changes, they will know. Alrighty, anything else? Okay, confirmation bylaw. Moved by John, second by Wenda. All in favor? Okay, and then we have a adjourn, motion to adjourn. Moved by Debbie, second by Sherry. All in favor? Good night, everybody. It's been a long 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and we will talk to you again.
Good night, folks.
Bye, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
John, we kept you on pretty good tonight.
That was good.